Hi, this is Carrie, and welcome to Tandem Talks, a podcast meant to empower you to live your life your way.
And I'm Craig. Join us as we go deeper with entrepreneurs and their journey creating success in business and life.
Welcome to another episode of Tandem Talks. We are super pumped to have Steven Hoffman, who is from the San Francisco area, but is road tripping. He's bouncing around the country right now, currently in Wyoming, is with us today, and we're excited to talk about all things entrepreneurship. He is the captain and CEO of Founderspace, which is one of the world's leading startup accelerators. It was actually ranked the number one incubator by Forbes and Entrepreneur magazines for overseas startups. Kind of a big deal. He's a serial entrepreneur, a venture investor. He's actually has a few award-winning books, which, writing our own this last year, we have amazing amount of respect for. So we've got a lot of big topics to dive into. But Steve, thank you for being here. And if there's anything from your side I missed in this intro, maybe you can give us a little high level background on what's keeping you busy today and what's the deepest passion point at this phase of the game in your life. Thanks for being on.
Sure. It's wonderful to be here. And I can tell your audience, I have done 3 venture funded startups in Silicon Valley and 2 bootstrap startups myself. So I've been in the trenches. Yeah. I know what it's like. One of my companies was a side hustle. I was doing it on the side, and in fact, it's Founderspace. What I'm doing now started as a hobby, actually, me helping out my friends, trying to get them up to speed with their startups. And then it just kept going and going and going. And I never anticipated where we would be today. So that's a little more about me. I've actually done so many different things in my lifetime that I won't cover them all. But I've been a manga rewriter. I worked in the film and television business. I've been an electrical engineer, a game designer. I've had probably more careers than cats have had lives.
That's a lot. That's a lot. So getting going, just kind of warming us up, why should someone have a side hustle? Maybe talk just a little bit more about what you do with the incubator and why that is so important and valuable for people. I think that might actually give us a really good foundation from there, to be honest.
Sure. I believe a lot of the best ideas actually start as something that you're passionate about. And usually side hustles are things you got a full-time job. So you're doing that. And then on the side, you're really interested in something and you want to explore it and go further. And then it starts to develop. And then all of a sudden you see the potential that, wow, there's a lot more here. I could do a lot more. Yep. And the real challenge is, and I work with lots of entrepreneurs. So every year, Founderspace right now, we have, over 50 partners in 22 countries around the world. We have incubators all over. We have partners all over. And I see these entrepreneurs, a lot of them, start on the side. But the really hard thing that they encounter is when to make the leap. When do I quit my day job and dive into this company that is a big unknown and a big risk? And one of the pieces of advice I give them is this. I say, look, don't drink your own Kool-Aid. Don't, everybody falls in love with their baby, their idea. Right. We all do. We create this thing, we bring it to life, and what you really need to know is not how much you love it and not how much you're passionate about it, because you can be as passionate as you want about your product. You can actually build the best product or service in the world. But if other people don't care, it does nothing. It goes nowhere. Right. So, if you want it to be a hobby, that's great. Just do it and do it. Right. But the point where you should make that leap is where you suddenly see the connection that there are people out there who don't just look at what you're doing and say, oh, that's pretty nice. That's cool. That's cool what you're doing. Anybody can say that. What they do is they say, oh my God, can I try it? Oh my God, I need this, right? I have to have it. If you start getting that response over and over again, then you have something.
Yeah. It's a really good point, because I also think the echo chamber of our family and our friends, especially if they haven't built businesses before, there's a lot of mixed emotions and skill sets and perspectives that they have that they could be projecting onto you, like, oh, that's a great idea, or you should go for it, or, oh, you don't want to start your own business, that really aren't even relevant.
Maybe not representative.
Yeah. And we talk about this a lot, but sometimes the people who love us aren't qualified to empower us. Right. And so it's like, you got to get out of that echo chamber and talk to more people and people who've actually built businesses. Right. But to your point, yeah, if you're talking to business owners or other people in general, and you're hearing that over and over again, that's a really cool way to look at it. Yeah.
I completely agree, because a lot of people, they will see things through their lens. Like some of them may not be risk takers, and they may not tell you to take a risk. Maybe your spouse doesn't want to lose the income. So they're like, don't do this, because they're afraid of that, despite the potential of it. And then friends, they just may think, oh, it's great, go for it. But it's not them who has to make the leap. They're telling you to do something that they probably wouldn't do. So because they don't take it as their own. So yes, you really have to make that decision. And the only people who can actually tell you whether you should turn that side hustle into a full-time thing are the customers. Like, honestly, like if you're out there with the customer, I always tell entrepreneurs, the first thing you need to do when you do any startup is like, your ideas actually don't even matter at the beginning. You need to go and engage with these customers, figure out, where their head is. Like, what are their problems? What's keeping them up at night? What are their dreams? What do they want to, what are their goals? Do you align with these? Like, if you don't align with the top 3 priorities of your potential customers, you're off their radar. Like, they can say all the nice things in the world, but if you have them list off their top 3 priorities and you're not in those, they're probably not going to call you back when you ask for money. Like, they'll take something for free, maybe, but when you actually ask them to commit to it, they won't do it. And that commitment is the point, from which you have a hobby to a real business, something that's really going. The other thing entrepreneurs need to consider is the market. What do you want to do? Like, do you want this thing to be an extra source of income? If you do, keep it as a side hustle and you can keep it small. That's great. Does it have the potential to be your primary income? That's a whole nother thing. For primary income, it doesn't have to be that big. But you have to understand, with a lot of these businesses, and I work with entrepreneurs, that they go in cycles. Like, a lot of times right before Christmas leading up, their sales can be ramping, and then later in the summer they can plummet. When you have a steady job, you have a steady income, you might be at a certain cycle where you're seeing things really good, but that may not last. Like, I've seen it. And especially with the COVID thing, I had people doing stuff online, and when COVID when people were really scared and staying indoors, those were booming. And then later it dropped off significantly. So you need to factor these things in. You can't assume everything is going to be just like it is now. Yeah. Though I always say the entrepreneur's job, and especially when you're doing a side hustle, is really to gather as much information as possible. Information, data about the real world, what's really going on, where the market is. That will inform you how to plot your future. And so the more you learn, the more you can learn, the earlier on, the better off you'll be. Instead of just making assumptions and diving in, really treat it as like a science experiment where you're going out, you're trying a bunch of different ideas, you're gathering information, and then you can bring those in and start to see the future. That's how people see the future. It's not magic. Like, it's actually engaging with the world and seeing how the world is reacting to what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's so brilliant. And I think it can be hard for aspiring business owners to not have that naive excitement and focus on data and look for the demand in the market and find it, right? I know I've heard you say, don't just build products, really hunt for demand. And I think that summarizes what you've shared. And I think a lot of people struggle with that, especially if they haven't already built successful businesses, right? A lot of our audience is more first-time business owners. I started my first business at 22. So it's that naive energy and excitement. You got to kind of get realistic and practical at a certain point. And as you said, like really focus on information and data. So brilliantly put.
Yeah. Can you just explain a little bit what the incubator does or is? Because I think that that's something that could be a great resource for some of our listeners for sure.
Our incubator founder space, we are really dedicated to education. So educating entrepreneurs, and we have all different levels. So we have a level that's open to everybody. Like you can come to our site, there are tons of videos, there's online programs, there's a startup kit for everybody who needs all the tools that they need to get going. But there are also other levels. So when you're early on, when you're kind of doing a side hustle, you would really come to us to kind of engage with the community and education. When you actually have a product and you can actually show that there are customers out there who really, really need this product, that is when you're ready to enter our accelerator program. And our accelerator program is much more in depth. That's when we could invest money into you, we invest time into you, we introduce you to our whole network of investors. That's when you're ready to actually go out and raise capital. Now, I would say, 95% of side hustles aren't there yet. There's a reason they're side hustles still, but that 5% is, approaching that point where they are ready to make that leap. And what we do though, is when you enter our accelerator program, we do require that you make that leap. Like we require that you are ready to commit full time because we work with venture investors, like some of the top investors in Silicon Valley, and they require that. Like they want, before they're going to put in their money, they want to see that you're taking that step, that you are that committed. They also want to see, which a lot of side hustles are solopreneurs. They're solo entrepreneurs doing it themselves out of their home, which is great. But to make that next step into the venture world, we like to see that you formed a team, that you brought people together, and they're not just whoever you could find. Like these people are amazing. And I will tell your entrepreneurs out there, if you want to grow this business, like let's say you really want to grow it into a medium-sized company, a large company, or a unicorn, like one of these multi-billion-dollar companies, you never do it alone. Like you're not going to do it alone. And so what we look for is we look for you to be a leader. Like if you can't be a leader and you can't scale this business, kind of grow it and bring in the resources it needs, bring in the talent, that's the most important thing it needs, bring in money and press and customers, then your company, even if you have the best idea in the world, even if you're on exactly the right track, you won't be able to get there. Like you'll end up dropping the ball at some point, and some other person with that can really execute on it will see what you're doing, pick it up, run, and go score the touchdown. So when I look at startups, I look at a number of factors. So I look at the team, like, do they have a really solid team? And when you have no money, when you're just doing it as a side hustle and you really don't have a lot of resources, a lot of entrepreneurs say, how can I get a great team? How can I get people that could be working at Microsoft or Google to come and join me when when I can't really offer them anything but these shares that aren't even worth anything.
Right.
Well, I tell them that's your challenge. Like great leaders, great people who can actually motivate, inspire people to take chances and do things. They have the ability to get those people. Yeah. If you don't, maybe you should keep it a small business and let somebody else who can do it, because that's really the biggest differentiator between people who ride a side hustle for, as long as they want the rest of their life, and those who actually make the leap into these huge scalable businesses that the investors I work with are looking for.
I feel like you just summed up my life for the last 10 years. I mean, we see that in every industry, whether it's like direct sales or network marketing, or whether it's, a tech company that we're helping found, or real estate for that matter. It's like, can you energize others around, and can you create a type of momentum and an inertia that other people just get caught up in and are ready to roll with. So I definitely need to set you up with the CEO. I've been helping out for a little while, because they might be maybe an optimal candidate for the accelerator program.
I was hitting right under the table because you were just like, speaking our language over here.
Yeah.
I think it is so much too developing the right culture, right? Because if you've developed a winning culture, it just naturally attracts a lot of the right teammates or community by nature. So that value.
I can talk about that. What is a winning culture? So a lot of people in Silicon Valley make a mistake, right? They think a winning culture is getting the ping pong table and the pool table and the free lunches for everybody and the cool office that looks like Google. That is not a winning culture. What I look for when I engage with entrepreneurs as a winning culture is that the team itself is incredibly motivated. And how do you get this motivation? Like, how do you get people to invest not their money, but their souls, their futures, their dreams in your business? So how, if you want somebody to invest their dreams in your business, it has to be their business too. And the way you do this, the way great leaders do this, great entrepreneurs do this, is one, they paint a vision of where we're going, a really compelling vision. But even more importantly, when they paint that vision, they choose people that are I always say you can't make an employee into something they're not, right? When you bring somebody onto your team, you need people who are self-starters, self-motivators. And this is why they're hard to find, right? And they have to be talented. If they're all going to be mediocre, you're going to end up with a mediocre business. If they're going to be, A+ players, you have a chance to build an A+ business. So get those right people. But what you need to do is you need to recognize that these people, they have talent, right? They know what they're doing. And you need to empower them to do their job. And I have a golden rule for every entrepreneur out there to make it super simple. Like, how do you empower people? How do you motivate people? Well, there's one rule that you can follow that really works, but it's really hard. And that is to keep your mouth shut whenever you want to tell them what to do. Like, as a CEO, as a leader, you're kind of think it's my job to tell you to do this, to tell you to do that. Everybody says delegate, but delegation isn't enough, right? You can delegate, but you're still telling them, you do this, you do that. No, don't do that. Don't waste your time on that. That kills people's motivation because they feel like, well, I just have to wait if I do something they don't like, they're just going to tell me to stop. And, if I don't do it the way they want it, they're going to come in and try to change it. What you need to do is I call ask, don't tell. So try this for just 1 week. Like, if you're out there and you have a team, right? Try it. Go to your different people you're working with, your employees, and instead of telling them anything, ask them. If they're working on something, say, how's it coming along? You know the goal. When do you think you can get it done by? Do you think you could get it done earlier? And then they have to tell you. If they think they can get it done earlier and they commit, great. Then they are committing to getting it done earlier. Do you think we could do it a better way? They have to think all of a sudden. Oh, is there a better way to do this? My boss is asking me if there's a better way. Okay, there might be a better way. I have to go figure that out. If you don't like what they're doing, instead of telling them to stop, you say, why are you doing it that way? And every time you ask a question, you not only gain the power of turning their brain on, right? Getting them to think and kind of own the problem, but you also get information. And information is your most powerful ally. So if you go to the person and you say, why, I saw that you had committed to this deadline. Why aren't we going to be able to make it? And then instead of just yelling at them for missing the deadline, then you start to figure out, oh, maybe there's a problem that we could solve here to speed things up. Maybe there's a bottleneck. They have to tell you stuff. Do you think we could do this another way? Then they're going to have to start to give you information. So a lot of entrepreneurs think it's their job to have all the ideas, to figure out the whole plan, to do everything. It's not your job. Your job is to go to your employees and get them doing that, getting them to think, and then really supporting them, like figuring out what they need to actually do their jobs and getting it for them. Great leaders do this. They do it. And then at the same time, they are setting a clear direction for everybody to go. So they're not just going wherever they want because everybody knows what the ultimate goal is, but the way they get to that goal can be their own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so well stated.
I was on the phone with a CTO this morning and I was giving some advice, and then I paused and I said, so what do you see? How are things coming along? Just opened it up. And then I said, so how can we support you better as like a leadership team? How can the CEO support you and stuff? And it was really interesting. Some of the things that he said are things that I would have never thought of. And like, if I hadn't asked that question, and I'm not always that insightful, but I happened to have a moment of insight, a moment of clarity or something. And I asked the question, but it is really beautiful because people who are self-starters really don't want to be told what to do. They want to collaborate and they want to synergize. And I think that is a really powerful culture to create. So awesome. I'm really loving everything you're saying. I feel like I'm doing a lot of things right, or we've done a lot of things right based on what you're saying, which maybe is why we've had some fundamental success on certain levels. So far, most things have been a check mark. So let's take it up a notch. Let's say somebody has a company, they're rolling at $500,000, $1 million, 1.5, 2, and they're like ready to crank. They're ready to go next level. They've got their core team. They've got a decent culture. Like, what's next? What are the next smart things they need to be doing or big mistakes to avoid from that perspective?
Well, a really smart thing is once you've figured it out, like once you've identified where there's huge pent up demand that nobody else is meeting. This is why I always say hunt for demand. Right. And you have positioned yourself with a product that can meet that demand. And then you're starting to crank it up, get the money coming in. That is the time when you can get investment. And I write about this in depth in my new book, Surviving a Startup, how to survive. Getting the capital seems easy, but it's not. Like it is, people usually approach it the wrong way. First, the biggest mistake most people make is going out too early to get capital. They're not ready. Investors, they call them venture capitalists, but they're not that adventuresome. Like they actually want to see that you figured something out. They don't just want to invest in an idea. They want to invest in something that's actually going to go.
That's viable.
So you need to come to them with all the data you've gathered and the proof that these customers are just chomping at the bit to get this. And if you give me money, this is what venture capital is really good at. They are really good at giving you money to acquire more customers, basically like to grow that business. Good because point. To grab more customers and then to meet the need by hiring more people. Like that's what the venture money is for. It's not to figure it out. You figure it out on your own. And that's why side hustles.
Perfect sense.
Side hustles are so important in that case because, you can figure it out while you're still not starving to death doing, you have a day job. But then when you're really going, how do you approach investors? Like this is a question entrepreneurs come to me all the time with, and I'm an investor too. So I've been on both sides of the table. I've raised a lot of money as an entrepreneur. I tell them, everybody makes a PowerPoint presentation and then they go and then they pitch the investor and they pitch the presentation over and over and over and they get rejected over and over and over. And they don't understand why. But I will tell you exactly why. One of the things that entrepreneurs fail to do is that when you are engaging with an investor, it is really important not to sell them. Don't go in there thinking, I have to, sell them on my idea. I have to get them I'm just going to go through my pitch and hit all the points. That is not what sells investors. The best way you can close investors is to open a dialogue with them. To start talking to them, but not just talking at them, actually letting them ask you questions, letting them start to figure out what your business is with you in a discussion rather than a pitch. So I always think the best pitches out there are conversations where you're having with the investor. And, you're not trying to just lead them through a set formula. You are actually encouraging them to give you feedback, to ask questions. Because when somebody does that as an investor, when they start to give you feedback, what they're doing is they are getting invested psychologically in your business. Like every time they give you, when you have your own ideas about something, you get excited. When somebody else is telling you the ideas, you're just listening, you're passive, right? So you want to get their mind working. Every time they have to come up with a question, they are actually listening more carefully than if you just told them the answer in a routine pitch. This is magic. Once you do that, you get the investors up to speed with this dialogue. The next thing you need to do is take control of the pitch. So a lot of entrepreneurs fail in this too. Like they literally let the investor decide when and if we're going to have another meeting, whether, what the next steps are, all these things. If you want to close deals, you need to actually lay out, okay, this is a process that I go through with every investor. We're going to go to the first meeting. I'm going to give them, I'm going to really sit down with them and we're going to discuss the business in a two-way fashion. The end of the first meeting, I'm going to tell them, is there anything else you need to make a decision? Like you want to get them in the mindset that you are expecting them to actually make a decision, because a lot of investors, they see it so many pitches every day. Like in Silicon Valley, especially, they see people are coming in all day long, every day pitching them. So they just sit back, and they don't, a lot of times they don't decide, and then they forget about you or they say no. But so you need to say, is there anything else you need to make a decision? And is there anybody else you need in the room to make that decision? When you figure out those things, then you say, well, let's set up our next meeting, and I'm going to get you all the stuff you need to look over before the next meeting, and please make sure the other people are in the room. If you do this, all of a sudden you're in control.
Yeah.
You go to that second meeting with them. In this, sales works for everything. It doesn't just work for closing investment. It works for corporate sales and other types of sales too. So you go to that next meeting with them, and you basically give them the pitch again, or the conversation. You're going back and forth, answering all their questions, getting them involved. The real beauty of this is that because it's a dialogue, because it's not a one-way pitch, every time you meet with an investor, even if they don't invest, you are learning something, because a lot of times they're really smart people. They're like amazing people. They've founded businesses. They've seen so many companies. They're investing in lots of companies. So they can shed light on problems that you may not even see that you have or will have in the future. Right. So you're like gaining all this information. And when I pitched my companies, I literally, every time I pitched an investor, I would retweak my presentation. My presentation never remained the same. Sometimes really small tweaks, but I did this by watching their eyes. Like I would look at their eyes as I would talk to them, and when their eyes lit up, I would know, oh my God, what I said was perfect. Like that was a home run. And when they were kind of drifting off, I knew I didn't have them. When I got them to ask really good questions, that's like, how did I get them to ask that question? You kind of want them to ask the questions you want them to ask, so you can give them the right answers. So you lead them down this path where they really are engaged and feel like they understand your business. So it's an art, but you have to work on it. You have to constantly iterate on your pitch as much as you do your product and anything else in your business. You can't just give the same thing over and over.
Right.
At the end of the next meeting, you should try to close. Like literally, you don't need a lot of times more than 2 meetings to close an investor. Like if they're hot, they're hot on you. Now, the thing that makes investors close more than anything is one thing. It's fear, but it's also greed, right? You need to make the investor more afraid of losing the deal than they are afraid of losing their money. So it's this balance. Like if they are afraid that you literally will walk out the room and get another investor and they will be cut out of the deal, they are much more likely to close the deal in that meeting. Think about it. If you're shopping for a home, right? Yeah. And it's a home that you think, wow, this is a really amazing home. But there's always a more amazing home out there. You know that. And there's always a better deal out there. You know that. Investors know that too. What's going to get you to buy this home? Well, if you realize that there's another buyer waiting to get this, your mentality changes. Oh, maybe there aren't better homes out there. Maybe this is the best one I can get right now, and I'm going to regret it. So you jump in and close that deal on that home. That is what you need to get in psychology, the investor to do.
Right.
That's what makes Shark Tank so fun, when all the investors get riled up by the other one putting in an offer.
Exactly. And it's fun for you too. I always say, give every investor 3 shots. It's like kissing frogs. When the investor is a frog, And you always, when you kiss a frog, you hope it turns into Prince Charming, carries you away, makes all your dreams come true, right? Gives you the money and you can do whatever you want. But if you kiss that same frog 3 times and it doesn't turn into Prince Charming, it's just a frog. So that investor is like, they're literally, that's why you have to like set limits. Like by the 3rd meeting, and some investors will drag this out forever if you let them. By the 3rd meeting, you literally need to say, look, I can't meet with you anymore. You have to make a decision now. And a lot of investors will say, well, I don't want to be the lead investor, the first investor. I want to follow. When you get another investor, come back to me. That's easy for them to say. Like, that's insurance. Like, oh, go away. I can find a better deal myself on another startup. But, if you get a better deal, you have to bring me in. Don't fall for that. Tell them, we don't need followers right now. In fact, if I get another lead, that person is going to bring in all their friends to follow, So I probably won't even have room for you, even if I want to bring you in. So if you want to be in this deal, you have to close it now. And then give them a deadline. Say, look, I can wait, up to a week or 2 and give them a date. You get back to me. If you're not interested, totally understand. In fact, walking away, the strength to walk away will make them more likely to close. Like nobody wants to close on an entrepreneur that is desperate, right? They want to close on the deal they can't get, like they think is going to escape. So it's kind of like dating that way. If the person is desperate, you're like, well, do I really want to invest? But if they're like walking away, you're like, no. So that's just a little bit of the advice I can give your entrepreneurs.
I could talk to you for a long time about this stuff, probably for hours. I know obviously your time is valuable as is ours, but let's talk strategy then. You go out, you get some of the funding you want. Maybe you don't get all of it, but you get some, right? What do you do from there? What's the next steps that are really critical? And this is probably some summarizing of your book. So I'm sure if people want more detail than they're getting in this call, they can go pick up which book would speak to these different sectors. Cause I know,
so I have a lot of books now. I have, Make Elephants Fly is all about innovation. So it's all about how you come up with that new idea and launch the product. And what we're talking about now with investing is surviving a startup. That's where, you're in survival mode. You have to close the deal, everything else. So once you close your investment, everybody thinks, and I thought this, I did 3 venture funded companies. I thought, oh my God, I finally closed the round. This is like, I'm in heaven. I went from no money to more money than I could possibly spend, millions and millions of dollars. But honestly, you're not on easy street. That's when life gets really hard because you're under a lot of pressure. You're under pressure to hire people. You're under pressure, to meet the investors, their expectations. You pitch them on certain revenue targets and growth, and you have product deadlines, and customers need things. Really gets crazy. Mm-hmm. So you need to, first of all, if you have a great team, then you're they can pick up the ball here and really run with it, start to execute on it. If you don't have a great team, you're in trouble. You better darn well start getting a great team. But the worst thing you can do at a time like this is to just hire quickly anybody who's out there. There's a lot of pressure to do so. The investors want you to scale, meaning grow quickly, but hiring quickly, and I made this mistake. If you hire subpar people, it will end up hurting you more than helping you.
Yeah, for sure.
Like my engineering team at one of my first venture funded startup, they worked like crazy. They're a 3-person team. Then we closed $6 million in funding. I was like, okay, I want to take the pressure, hire as many people as you can. Well, they ended up hiring 20 people. But none of those people, they were all great, the original 3, but those 20 people all needed to be gotten up to speed. They weren't at the same level that these people were. It ended up making it harder on them, not easier. I learned from that. If you're going to hire very selectively, take your time, because it takes time to integrate and train people. And, when you have a 3-person company and you hire an additional person, you just grew by 25%. Like you have now
you're 1/5 of the firm, right?
Yeah. So you are. It's a huge growth level. When you're at 100 people, if you hire 3 people, it's a tiny growth, right? It's you're adding 3%. So the idea of hiring, you have to remember when you're small, hiring even one person takes a lot of time of your existing team to train and get up to speed. So first of all, make sure that person is really already the type who's up to speed, even if you have to pay more, even if it costs you significantly more. I have learned also that the A players end up producing like exponentially more than the B and C players, not linearly more, right? It's not like if they're excellent, they produce 50% more. That's not the case. They might produce 10 times more. Like their results might be 10 times more valuable. So if you pay that person double, you're still coming out ahead. So don't be cheap. Like, don't be cheap on people. Don't go for the lowest, the lowest cost people, especially in a company that's innovation driven, technology driven, or really needs expert marketing people or people like that. Get the best you can get. It'll pay off in many, many different ways in terms of the scalability, the time of your team, the quality of the decisions you make, everything. It'll pay off in all those areas. And as a small company, hire more people at a higher cost, hire fewer people at a higher cost than more people at a lower cost. It's not the number of people you have, it's the quality.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. I mean, there's so much cost that goes in when you have turnover, right? And it's hard to even calculate it because you have so much cost getting that person and then you train them and then they leave and you didn't even get any value because you spent the whole time or a good chunk of the time maybe training and then they're gone. Then you repeat process from beginning and then you're exhausted emotionally, mentally, you feel burnt out. Maybe they left on bad terms. I mean, there's so many things.
So much. And then they can waste their money. If they're a bad marketing person, they waste your money. If they're a bad engineer, their code isn't any good, and it ends up screwing up your platform, and you have to recode it all. So I've had that happen. Like I've had engineers where this is my rule: is we all make mistakes in hiring, but do not try to change the person. This is what I've learned. It's almost impossible to turn somebody who isn't great into somebody who's great. If they aren't performing on the job at the level you require, and you realize that, most people will give them a second chance, a third chance, a fourth chance. I've done it. Like I'm trying to be a nice guy, Yeah,
absolutely.
They may be a nice person and I don't want to fire them, but that doesn't matter when you're a startup. Like this is do or die. You're not a big corporation. You can't have fat. So as soon as you realize it, just cut them right then. Like just make that hard decision. We're going to have to let you go. You're not, we've given you 3 warnings. You haven't performed. You're out. We're not going to give you a 4th, a 5th, a 6th warning. Almost every entrepreneur I know, first-time entrepreneur, when they're hiring, they tell me, they say, my nickname is Captain Hoff in Silicon Valley. So they go, Captain Hoff, I wish I had fired that person 6 months ago. And I will tell you, you almost never regret letting go somebody too early. You only regret keeping them too long.
Yeah. Yeah. I think my wife's not here, but I think I might have had a romantic relationship or two like that. Her and I both probably. And it's like, once it's not right, man, don't stay in it. Don't stay in the relationship.
It never makes it better.
What's that? Yeah, it never makes it better.
You can never change it.
Worse. Yeah. Yeah. So look, we could go on for a long time here with you. Honestly, I feel like we're just getting the tip of the iceberg, but people should check out your book. Where can people find you other than your books? I mean, and list those off again, if you would, please.
I will. So if you want to reach me, you can reach me at founderspace.com. So founderspace.com. I'm there, tons of free materials. You can also find my books there. The books are my first book, Make Elephants Fly, all about innovation. Second book, Surviving a Startup, all about everything entrepreneurs need to know to survive and get ahead at the end of the game. So just come to Founderspace. You can also find me on all the social networks under Founderspace.
Wonderful. And I would encourage people to do that, especially, depending on what space they're in. But I think attacking those resources is really important, and stop just listening to your friends and your family who aren't always going to give you either the best reverb or accurate or authentic reverb, right? And then looking at your accelerator program, I definitely have a referral to kick over to you there, and on a pretty serious note. But thanks for your time. I mean, we talk a lot about building businesses as a tool to help you create a great life and to figure out what matters most, right? And to stay close to those things. And obviously creating the success is why people start. And if you don't create the success, then you usually a lot of times just end up creating pain, right? And unnecessary suffering. So I think a lot of your tips today were absolutely spot on.
Greg and I both have a lot of notes from today. So I hope the audience takes notes. I hope you revisit. I hope you implement. I know we're really excited about all the things that we learned today, Steven. So thank you so much for being on. And we'll put your links and everything in the show notes so people can find you. And I look forward to connecting with you on social media also. And thanks for being on. I hope everybody enjoys the grind. Take care. Thanks for listening to today's episode.
Please subscribe and leave a review, and be sure to visit tandemconsulting.co/talks.